1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We are back in the DFS lab. And it's always a show presented by 1 week season, where the purpose of the show, build a lineup on DraftKings, use it as a way to talk through the upcoming week 13 slate. You're watching this on Friday after yesterday, just a fun Thanksgiving slate. We're actually recording this on Tuesday, though, full disclaimer, with the holidays, just a little bit of a different schedule, but we'll try to make this, of course, as sharp as always. I'm your host, Cheeseman, and I am joined now by StatATL. It looks like, your Thanksgiving, you spent some time at Augusta, so I'm sure you played maybe a round or two. I know you're a fan of golf, but hey, man, so real quick, how was week 12? We'll look at last week's lineup briefly, but how was week 12 for you?
Week 12 was okay. Wasn't a great week. I generally keep that tighter player pool. Had three kind of QB stacks. Two of them did not do well, but third stack built around Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton did have a really strong game. So a third of those lineups, most of those Bo Nix stacks did cash, but losing week. But we're playing for first place, and 1 week makes a season. So that 1 week just didn't happen to be last week.
That's right, man. It's right. 1 week does make a season. Yeah, I mean, for me, I had a Bo Nix stack with Cortland Sutton. Felt like Bo Nix could have had a better game, but Denver just wasn't able to punch in those touchdowns as much as he wanted. Of course, Cortland Sutton was great, but that lineup had Christian McCaffrey and Jaden Reed in it. Both guys who completely dudded out, and then just had some Anthony Richardson. But again, like you said, 1 week does make a season, and so we move on. But here was just quickly the lineup from last week, which had the Anthony Richardson stack at home. It just didn't work out against Detroit, and then you had this lineup just kind of just potholes in this lineup because a lot of guys got hurt. But you did have Trey McBride.
Yeah, I mean, we were directionally accurate with a couple of spots for sure. Arizona, Seattle, Trey McBride, and then, had you gone Jackson Smith and Jigba there, those are both really high-scoring plays. Detroit had some high-scoring options as well. And then, it just didn't really work out with Anthony Richardson. Josh Downs got hurt. That doesn't help. Brian Robinson got hurt. That doesn't help.
Yeah,
doesn't help. And Tyrone Tracy, I think had some fumble issues and didn't see as many carries. So not our best effort. I think we're only 5 out of 12 now. So not panning as well as we'd like to for the season. But DFS is hard, and as long as we keep it above that 20% threshold, I feel like we're doing well for building lineups on Tuesdays.
Yeah, absolutely. We've hit a little bit of a midseason slump, but that's okay. It's to be expected. I still think, like you said, directionally accurate. Anthony Richardson, felt like that was in a vacuum, definitely a good play. And ultimately, Josh Downs getting hurt. It just didn't work out. But dude, looking ahead to week 13, for a 10-game slate, and given the fact that you've got the 3 Thanksgiving games that happened yesterday. You've also got the game tonight between the Chiefs and the Raiders. So a lot of games being taken away from the main slate, but you've got some pretty attractive contests. So let's jump into DraftKings here. And I'll just tell you from the outset, like one game we were talking a little bit before, getting, starting this show. One environment that stands out to me that I like is the game between the Colts and the Patriots. Drake May at home against, Anthony Richardson. I'm totally fine going back to Anthony Richardson. I feel like for his price is barely moved, and he has 30-point upside, and so does Drake May. I mean, again, a game between two quarterbacks who can add points on the ground, can potentially even run in a touchdown. To me, stacking partners can be a little tougher when you have a rushing quarterback, so maybe you'd only do a single stack. But I really like the two quarterbacks in that game and feel like that's definitely going to be a way that I'm going to be looking to build. Again, you have on this slate, you have like this great game between just in terms of just a brand name Eagles and Ravens, that feels just like a great potential game environment. But the fact that Anthony Richardson and Drake May both could put up 30 makes me really like them at their price points. So that kind of stood out to me on the initial look at this one. How about you? What are you seeing so far in this slate?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of spending most of my focus on the Thanksgiving slate. We've got a lot of content related to that this week.
Yes.
I've done kind of a quick initial look at the main slate. And yeah, a couple games stood out. You know, I do really like that Philadelphia-Baltimore game. That when I did my very first pass, that was kind of what stood out to me. I do think there's some sneaky upside potentially in the Houston at Jacksonville game, specifically. You know, if we get Trevor Lawrence returning for Jacksonville, I think that elevates their chances of some tournament-worthy scores. So I do like that as well. And I think Tampa Bay at Carolina. I mean, we saw Carolina look competent for like the first time all season against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs last week. You know, tying it up there with like a minute to go. And obviously, like Carolina has been a defense that we've tried to pick on a lot of the season. Honestly, the same with Tampa Bay has shown some vulnerability there on defense. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's some, for only being a 10-game slate, there are definitely some spots to be excited about.
Yeah, man, there absolutely are. Yeah, I mean, I could see it as well with Houston and Jacksonville. But, you know, we've talked ad nauseum on this show with me and you about just the vulnerabilities of the Baltimore defense against QB and wide receiver ones. So that's certainly a spot I'm excited about. I mean, you know, Baltimore did let's see, was it Monday night that the Chargers, that's right, Chargers, Justin Herbert didn't put up like a huge game, but still, you know, that offense can be, you know, a little hit and miss. So yeah, man. So where do you want to start with this build?
Man, I have been pushing it all season. So we're going to, as you just alluded to, I think that's where we're going to go here. We're going to pick on the Baltimore defense, who is improving. You know, still probably one of, if not the worst passing defenses in the league statistically. So let's go back there with Jalen Hurts off the top, and we'll grab kind of the, you know, the QB and the wide receiver one for Philly, and that's how I want to pick on Baltimore. So let's go Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown. Certainly an expensive stack. So you know, I think that it's just us being conscious, if this is the way we want to go, we're probably going to have to be salary conscious in a couple of spots. So we'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you're paying up for a stack like this, you're absolutely saying like that you're betting that Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are going to hook up for a huge score. I mean, you're really needing 30 plus, you know, for each player to really be in a good spot with this lineup. But, you know, why would you be betting for any less if you pay up for this stack?
Yeah. And so I think that if that is the way, and I think you really explained that well, I think that if we're getting a tournament worthy score out of Hurts and AJ Brown, it's likely that Baltimore is either keeping this competitive or winning. You know, I think this is the best on paper game of the week. So yeah, let's go and bring this back. You know, I think that you probably have 3 or 4 kind of potentials of how you could run this back. You could run this back with Henry, really probably going to be way too expensive for us. And then I think your two most, you know, your most likely options we could consider Zay Flowers. His price is down a little bit to 6,200. I think that that's an option for us to consider. Or we look at Mark Andrews, who's continuing to remain involved in the offense. And, you know, I think at 3,900, this kind of gives us a little bit of salary relief with going Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown to start.
Yeah.
So I'd like considering that. You know, you're seeing pretty consistent 5, 6, 7 targets most weeks. We see him as a target in the red zone. So, you know, at 3,900, it's not going to take a ton to pay off his price. Certainly, if we're getting those 30-point scores out of Hurts and AJ Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. Love Mark Andrews in this spot. His price seems almost too reasonable. So it's hard to not feel, or it's hard to feel bad about that play for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. So I think, here we've got about 5,000 left. So we got some different directions we can go. I think that I'd like to kind of lean into some value here. Again, it's Tuesday, so we don't have a ton of information, but yesterday in the Monday Night Football game, J.K. Dobbins suffered that knee injury. I think it's more likely than not that he misses this game against Atlanta, which really opens up the Chargers backfield. We know they are a team that likes to run the ball. And so I think a lot of the field, or maybe not a lot of the field, but I think the first inclination from most of the field will be to roster J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, to me, obviously goal line back.
Wait, do you mean Gus Edwards?
I mean Gus
Dobbins
Edwards
is out.
Yeah, Gus Edwards. I think that's going to be where people will go. But to me, I think I've got more interest in the rookie running back, Kamari Vidal. I think that is an interesting play. He is min priced. Hasn't seen a ton of run this year, but I think that's going to change if Dobbins is out. So I think at 4K, I think this is an interesting spot. I think that if Dobbins is out and you get the news that Vidal is going to be splitting time, I think he'll gain some ownership. But I think this is a sharp way to build this early in the week.
Exactly. And again, just like you said, the disclaimer, we are recording this on Tuesday, so a lot can change, but at least, speculating that Dobbins is out, I think Vidal is a way that you potentially late in the week might be something we're looking at pretty seriously.
Yeah. And so, I think there are some really intriguing options, certainly at running back, whether you're looking at like Kamara, you're looking at Joe Mixon, you're looking at Saquon Barkley. So that I think commonly people will, if Vidal is the guy, I think you'll get a lot of people who are paying down for Vidal to get to Barkley or Mixon or Henry or Kamara that are, paying up. They're kind of offsetting that. But I think an interesting way to potentially attack this week would be to look at kind of paying down twice at running back, obviously not quite to 4K, but I know one of the matchups we're always interested in attacking is Carolina's run defense. And I think we saw a little bit of that breakout from Bucky Irving last week. And so would love to lean in to him, coming off, again, I think 18 touches last week, maybe his most of the season. He had, I think, 16 back in week 8 against Atlanta. I think he had 16 the previous week. The previous week against the 49ers. So, I certainly think that 15 to 20 touches is well within his range of outcomes. And at 5,800, I think this is a spot that I want to lean into Bucky Irving here against a weak Carolina run defense.
Yeah, and just look at this real fast, man. Look at like 6 targets, 6 receptions, 3 targets, 3 receptions. He is catching every single target thrown his way. I remember, I mean, this is going to be a chalky play this week, and I will eat that chalk gladly. I'll lock Bucky Irving. It just seems like he just is in such a good spot and is playing so well. I was listening to the Slate podcast on Saturday, and Zandermeer was making the point that, Tampa Bay came into the season thinking, hey, this is going to be a split backfield, but Bucky Irving has just played so well that they just are kind of being forced to play him more because he's playing that good. So, I mean, you could see like a future star really emerging here in the league, I think. And let's get him while he's still cheap,
Yeah, I love that shot. And I think, I think it was Zandermeer. I think you nailed it. Like, has literally just taken the decision out of the coach's hands by his play on the field. He has just outperformed Rashad White basically every game. So, I mean, I think that we're likely to see 15 to 20 touches from him here. Certainly if Carolina is keeping the game competitive, like, Tampa Bay is still in this in this fight for the playoffs, Atlanta has a really tough schedule the upcoming games. And so even though Tampa Bay, I think, is slightly under 500, like they're still in the playoff hunt in the NFC South. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them lean on Bucky Irving here and to secure another win. So I think this is a sharp way to start, gives us some good flexibility, 5,000 left to player, and we still have defense left. So gives us a lot of flexibility on how we want to build this lineup. And I think a lot of times we go to the defense here and just kind of plug in a D. But I think at this point, because I know I've got some more salary flexibility, I kind of want to target one of those other games that we highlighted early on as a game environment that stood out to me. So I want to look at this Houston and Jacksonville game through the passing game and grab a couple of wide receivers from this game. Like this just really stands out as a spot for Nico Collins to me. And I think with, how CJ Stroud has looked the last couple of weeks, people may shy away from this matchup, but this is a matchup where Nico Collins put up like 35 or 36 points against them earlier in the season. And now, they don't have Stephon Diggs. So it's just even less targets to spread around. So to me, this is really a slam dunk spot for Nico Collins. Like I love this spot for Nico Collins, and I'm going to be curious to see where his ownership comes in at. And then, leaning into the fact that I'm hopeful that we get Trevor Lawrence back for the Jags. If Nico Collins is putting up this monster had to have it score, I think you're seeing more pass attempts from Jacksonville. And I would love to kind of lean into Brian Thomas Jr., who has put up some massive games this year with Trevor Lawrence. His price tag has come down just because he's, been dealing with a backup quarterback the last few weeks. And so I really like going to Brian Thomas here in this kind of mini correlation.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, let's just see what the practice most recent update was on him. But yeah, he was practicing Monday. AC joint sprain to his left non-throwing shoulder. So yeah, it looks like he definitely is in play to potentially come back. So again, something that will once again have to keep an eye on as the week progresses. But if Lawrence is back, then yeah, absolutely love that play, dude. That's sharp. Brian Thomas,
I don't know that
he got as high as 6,600. So he's definitely way down from his peak.
Yeah, and you're seeing, not that we're game log watchers, but you're seeing 3-4 games out of, maybe 7 or 8 with maybe 8 or 9 with Lawrence that, put up 20 plus points. So I like that upside. Obviously, we're again early in the week, but not a spot that I like if it's Mac Jones at the helm. We've just seen him be completely inefficient. And I think if it is Mac Jones, my interest is super high in the Houston Texans defense.
Yes.
But since we're going to build this lineup that it's Trevor Lawrence, I'm probably not as high on the defense. So probably, again, we're down to 3,500. So we're probably going to need to look at a cheaper defense here, probably someone sub 3K to try to give us a little bit more options as it relates to that flex spot.
Yeah.
I think the Rams are interesting here. I don't think the Saints are that good. They've got Shaheed's still out, but they've got Olave back. I think the Rams are a spot that have some interesting upside. I think the Jets D is interesting. But let's pencil in the Rams here. Not a ton of options down low that I love.
Yeah, there's not a lot of great defenses spots this week.
But
I do like the Rams. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so this would get us up to 4,200. I think a couple ways that you could go here. We could lean in potentially to like Deontay Johnson and kind of play Hurts and AJ Brown with two Baltimore Ravens. I think that's an interesting way to potentially go here. If you're playing the Rams defense, we could look at like Mason Tipton as the wide receiver 2 for the Saints, in that they're behind and having to throw more. But I think an interesting way to kind of go here is to grab Hunter Henry and kind of play 2 lower tight ends on this field, on this build. Both guys who are heavily involved in their offense. Hunter Henry, I think 3 out of the last 4 games has had 8 or more targets. So he's kind of been, it hasn't led to big outputs, but certainly, one of the biggest indicators of fantasy success is opportunity. So he's on the field a lot. He's seeing a lot of targets. So I think this is an interesting way to build it. And I think that if this was the way we would go, would probably have you swap Henry and Andrews so that Andrews was in the flex. But obviously you're just building this off the cup with us here. So
yes. Okay. So yeah, I want to put Andrews in the flex because that is the later game. And then Hunter. Well, no, don't come on.
Yeah, you got to go Henry first probably, but that's okay.
No, Andrews. Here we go. Andrews flex. There we go.
Nice.
Henry. But cool. Yeah, no, that's great, dude. And if you look at Hunter Henry, he's put up pretty good. This is a term that Jam to Win uses a lot, but the pre-touchdown fantasy production has been strong. I mean, he hasn't even scored a touch. I don't know what his red zone usage is, so that certainly would be something to look at. But add a touchdown to, a pair of these scores, and, he suddenly becomes a very valuable play. So, yeah, man. Great stuff. Stat, this is good. This is for the podcast, the lineup that we landed on was, going with that Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown stack on the road at the Ravens, and then Vidal at the running back, Kamani Duvall with speculating that J.K. Dobbins will be out, then Bucky Irving, Nico Collins, and Brian Thomas, and then Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews with the double tight end build, and the Rams defense. Stat, man, great stuff as always. Anything else you want to add before we ship this one off as we look ahead to Week 13?
I hope that people are watching this on Friday, celebrating some big Thanksgiving wins. Yes. We've got some really great content on the site specific to Thanksgiving. And maybe it can be a double win week for an OWS subscriber with both Thanksgiving and the Week 13 main slate on Sunday.
Absolutely. Well, with that, guys, we appreciate you spending some time to watch the DFS Lab, and good luck for Week 13. We will see you guys next week. Stat, we'll catch you next time, bud.